of admissions, interviews, as well as sessions here. We get a lot of questions of like, what does a good essay look like? What does a not so great essay look like? And for me, that's a really hard question to answer because it's not bound by topic. It's not bound by certain elements in the essay. It's more how you present the information. So this is kind of experimental on Alyssa and I's part of like, will people understand what a good essay is via showcasing the first to the 10th draft and you know, kind of seeing the transformation there.
Yeah, this is definitely an experiment. Just as Ayaka has said, Ayaka and I have spent a lot of time talking about like there's so many different ways that an essay can be good. It becomes really hard to figure out like how to tell someone to make their essay better, especially when it has to especially come straight from the writer. So we are going to dive in and we're going to look at, we have a student's first draft or one of their first drafts, and we are going to read that. We're going to talk about some ways that it's weak and some ways that it's not showing up, and maybe some changes that we would bring up and things that we've talked about. Both of us have worked with this student before, and I don't know about you, Ayaka, but I do remember some potential like places of feedback that we gave them and ways that we wanted to move the story forward. And then we're going to take a look at the student's most recent draft. And I think that this is where it gets kind of like, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can screen share. Does anybody have, before we do that, does anybody have any questions for us? And I'm going to go ahead and just like leave 60 seconds for like open field. Anything at all, drop in the chat where you're at in your essay writing process. Like, do you have 3 drafts written? Do you have 3 separate essays written? I currently have a personal statement written. I have a diversity statement written. One of the schools that I am applying to is asking for a hardship essay as well. And they're asking for a 4th essay, which is a programmatic contribution essay, which means they want me to write and talk about how I imagine myself contributing to a specific course. So all of those are like sort of floating in my mind right now. Anybody else? Any questions?
Yeah, and I can share. I have my personal statement written, and Alyssa, I've told you this. I have a second personal statement that I'm working on.
Yes. Can you tell us why you would even start to write a second personal statement?
And this is a little bit experimental, but I feel like my first personal statement that I have, it's it's so tight, it's so solid, it's like my type 5, right? Like in comedy. So it's, you know,
I've never heard that term before.
It's, you know, I know it's gonna hit. I know it hits hard on all the things that I want to say, right?
Okay, I see.
I go to law school. The second personal statement is more true to who I am as a person, right? I'm much more of a positive, let's bring the smile, let's bring the, you know, like the let's go get it, like energy, right? And so, you know, and not necessarily like that hype up, but a little bit more true to the journey that I've taken as a person over the course of, I don't want to call it 20 years, but, you know, like as an adult, the journey that I've taken, and where I am now. And Alyssa and I, you know, we just got off a meeting and I called it hummingbird, being a hummingbird, but
yeah,
you know, going from one place to another, and it doesn't feel like it's continued my personal journey, but in actuality, it's a step forward every single time.
I want to just like backtrack right now because Ayaka, we just spent an hour together, Ayaka and I, and like talking about essays. And so we know what we're talking about, but just to like slow down for anyone else, like if you are someone who maybe has like a really diverse set of background and like you did this job and maybe this job, or you started, Ayaka and I actually see quite a lot of applicants that are studying medicine, and then you can see like a skirt moment in their transcript and like they start to like back it up, and then doesn't matter like what your background is, but what you call that hummingbird effect is like if you maybe have a lot of different things going on and you're trying to figure out, okay, do I look chaotic or like are all of these can I actually create like a storyline of like why this is all happening?
And I'll tell you like a great example. I like to say a great example, but it's kind of, it took me a bit to kind of work it through, but you know, I've worked as a English tour guide at the university. I was a fitness instructor. I worked in legal for a very domestic Japanese company. I worked in cybersecurity. Like, you know, there's this like hip hop through the world. And how do you tie that all together? Well, in my life, that made sense as a next step. And can you explain that as a cohesive story? And I think that's kind of where that desire to write that second essay is coming from, of this is really the essence of who I am, that condensed and put into a really punchy, powerful essay is that first essay that I've written. And I want to kind of loosen it up a little bit and kind of give a little bit more of a human side to it. And that's where that second essay is sitting. So
I was gonna say that that's interesting that you brought up like a little bit more of a human side to it, because if I had like an edited video and there was like a little pop-up that could be like, another thing that we keep seeing in applicants is that people are writing these like personal statement essays that are really serious, and I am not discounting serious. And then we get on a call with them and they are so personable, or they're so interesting, and they will talk about something that interests them, and I can feel myself leaning into the camera and I'm like, that you should be talking about that. And what they produce to us is like such a formal essay that it makes me, you said it beautifully, Ayaka. We had an essay this week that we were reading and working on together, and the person was using such formal language, and you said this essay has no pace, there's no momentum. There was no momentum in the essay at all, because the person was just kind of like formally saying these really long statements that I can't even bring up off the top of my head right now. But again, that directness and that personalness and bringing that human side to it, it's actually really, it seems like it's hard to do because we're not seeing it a lot. And then people say to us, well, I don't want to come across as unprofessional. And that's what we're trying to dance with. We're trying to figure out how you can be direct and speak and be a person and still be completely professional, because chances are, even if you are writing in your own voice, it's probably not going to come across as unprofessional, because you don't speak like that in a work meeting, for example, probably.
Absolutely. So that's kind of the theory behind the second personal statement. Sorry, long about conversation, but that's the theory behind the second personal statement that I'm working on. You know, have the diversity statement. There's a couple addendas that I'm working, well, one addenda that I'm working on, and a couple like school specific essays, but that's kind of where I'm sitting.
Nice. You know what, off the top of my head, because I just don't want to forget to say this ever, is that recently I thought that I needed to write a GPA agenda, because I have a certain, like, there was a lot that I was doing in my undergraduate career that doesn't show up on the transcript. And there is just this gap of where I was and where I was spending my time. And it's not showing, it wasn't showing up on the resume. It wasn't showing up on the transcript, but it's valid. And I really was spending my time doing that. And I recently was just working with someone and trying to figure out, like, where do we put this? And I was going to write a GPA addendum. But actually, after like speaking over this with my peer, we figured out it could actually fit on my resume. And so I wanted to just like shout that out, that, like, you don't have to put only school or only work on your resume. You can legitimately say, like, I also spent my time doing this. And that was a really exciting moment for me. So it seems like both of us have had like kind of like this like evolution of maybe like what we thought had to happen in our application and kind of like how we think about it now.
Absolutely.
Okay. It looks like we have a comment in the chat too that Claudia is in her 6th draft.
That's great.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, did you're welcome to kind of just give us a thumbs up and we'll move on, or did you want to unmute and like tell us more about that?
Yeah, so not a traditional student by all means of the world. Working family, everything, an entire life, beyond the door that's right here next to me. So yeah, I've been on this for a while. My entire desire since I was small is to go to law school, and I do work in a legal profession, executive vice president in a company, and trying to do everything all at once. So there it is. It is chaotic, and as Ayaka says, the hummingbird effect, right? You have everything. So trying to narrow down, what do they want to know about me? What do they want to see? And so I have all these drafts of different pieces of how do I come across it in a statement where it's authentic.
Yeah.
And I think that that's for me where I'm struggling the most, is to come out as authentic, personable and professional, and also introduce a side of me that I think I'm still trying to figure out who I am, because they're going to ask, why law school, right? Why law school? And it's like, you don't want to answer the same question that everybody answers, but it's being real. And I think that's for me, the biggest thing is, how do I come off as real in a statement? And so that's why there's so many drafts and addendums and all kinds of diversity statements that I've worked on, that I'm just trying to kind of tailor it down to really meet the needs of the specific school that I'm applying to, so that it comes off to who I am, and not necessarily just a synopsis of my life, but really who I am.
Right. I think you hit the nail on the head there with knowing that one of your biggest challenges is not just carrying out like everything you've done, but trying to say what you've done, why it's important to you, and why those experiences make up who you are, like who your core values are, and why you're ready for this next step in your life. I think that it sounds like you have a really good idea of what your challenge is. And also, Claudia, it sounds like you've put in a lot of time and effort into it.
Yeah, it's like, I think I'm driving myself crazy. So it's I guess it's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. But Ayak and I, so Cheetah, actually, you and I just spoke about this a week ago or 2 weeks ago, about how to know when do you hand your, like, what to edit, and do you use a lot of edits yourself, or do you give it to someone else and put other eyes on it? And Claudia, Ayaka and I, we absolutely love to do deep dives with anybody in the course. So email us. Anybody can email us that's listening to us right now. It's admissions@lsatunplug.com. That goes to Ayaka and I. Send us your draft, and we'll spend a whole class doing a deep dive and helping you clear out your thoughts. That's one of the perks of being in the course, is that you get both of us absolutely helping you and working with you on that. So I'd love to talk more about that, and maybe we can help take some like the crazy off of it, because so Cheetah and I mentioned that sometimes like the longer you're looking at a draft, like the more you're not sure what actually is important to the person reading it. Like, and Ayaka says it so beautifully, like, we know ourselves and we know what happened and we know the faces and we know the stories. And so we'll tell stories and we'll leave certain things out, or we'll go too far telling about something that we're like, okay, we got it. Like, it's so hard to communicate.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, there was a time when I looked at my personal statement, there's one sentence that didn't sound right, and I said it to myself 10 times, it like over and over again, trying to like figure out where the accent point is in that sentence. It gets a little nuts. So
I do that too. I'm so happy to know we're the same. So Cheetah?
I agree. And then like looking at the drafts over and over again, and then like Alyssa said, right? You don't know what to put, or you want to put certain things and leave certain things out. So I remember, Alyssa, we did, like, when we started writing the personal statement, right? Like, I kind of, I have it written, and then I would say a lot of things to her, and then she's like, what? Put that in there. Write that down and put it in there. That's important. Like, I want to know more about that. But because I guess for us, like when you write your own personal statement or whatnot, you kind of like, the backstory, right? So you would mention something so briefly and give no context whatsoever, and you expect someone else to understand, and you don't, like, I didn't even realize that I was doing that, because I guess in my head I understood what happened. I knew what happened, and I just left that whole part out. And just, if everyone was to read this, they're like, well, I'm wondering where's the other part of the story goes, did it get lost somewhere else? And the other thing too that I like, that's something that Ayaka and both Alyssa said a few weeks ago, during one of these personal statement session, is that not only having like talking to your peers who you're comfortable with, your friends, your family, but also like if you're comfortable sending it to someone who doesn't know you, right? So when they read it, they kind of give you like I guess you, and I mean, you want to let them know like, hey, I want as honest, don't be afraid. For me personally, like, don't be afraid to offend me. Just, like give me reviews and feedbacks and honest opinions, right? So that's something that I learned, and that I think is really definitely helpful in terms of writing your personal statement.
Definitely. I think if you want a competitive personal statement, you absolutely have to have multiple people looking at it.
Absolutely.
No brainer. Okay, let's look at this first draft, and then we'll Ayaka and I will talk about like what we would have told this person and what we did tell this person, and like see where currently it's kind of at. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, nice. I'm going to read this out. I have it pre-bit. Okay, so here we go. Oh, give me one moment here. Let's see. All right, so starts out like this. I am an exceptional performer. My two earliest memories are this. One was when I first experienced abuse from my parents when they locked me in our Texas garage, wrapped in a blanket, scared of the dark, and the huge, ugly space wondering, how will I get out here? The second being given a blue ribbon with the gold lettering, first place at a dance camp. I remember thinking, these people aren't very nice. By the age of 8, I had developed a plan to get out of my abusive home. I'd become a professional dancer. The summer before 5th grade, I wrote out nutritional plans from information I found in my school's library books. I wrote a fitness plan for myself and burned a mix CD for my workouts. Each song had an intention, with one song for cardio, one song for stretching, one for practicing ballet technique. By age 10, I had stopped attending school friend birthday parties on the weekends, saving those days for training. During the summers, I volunteered to assist the youth classes from 2 o'clock to 5:30 p.m., then take my own classes 5:30 to 7:30, and I'd sit in on the most advanced classes saved for the teenagers from 7:30 to 10 p.m. I did this 5 days a week. The other 2 days a week, I stayed at the dance studio, dancing in my own practices and sitting in on all the others from 5:30 in the morning until the last dance ran at 5:30 in the evening. I was accepted into a dance program. I spent many nights reading their website and memorizing the awards given to the classes prior to mine entering that fall, setting my focus once again. In some of the harshest times, when my bedroom lights flipped on in the middle of the night and my mother or father would take scissors to my things or start to slap me in my bed, I would think of how I would receive the Outstanding Freshman Dancer of the Year award. By the end of my time at school, I received Outstanding Freshman Dancer of the Year award, Phoenix Award, Phenomenal Recovery from Injury, Outstanding Choreographer 2 times, and Outstanding Performance Awards. And it goes on, but that is the first thing that was presented to Ayaka and I. So Ayaka and I have a 5-wave system in which we sort of will go through an essay. The reason we have this 5-wave system in place is because I would say the very last wave gets caught up in grammar and details. And when we start to get too close looking in on that in terms of the first thing that we like our plan of attack, we really miss the opportunity to even start out with, is this topic and is this content really effective and working for this person? Like, does this put this person in a good light? So our first wave has to do with like topic selection and content. So Ayaka, what would you say about the content and the topic of this?
I think when we first took a look at this, it was very much in the conversation of like, does it answer whether you want to go to law school or not? Clearly, not a clear 100% answer here. And we always come back to this question of like, is that important? Is that 100% necessary in an essay? I think 99.9% of essays, yes. There's that 0.1% that you don't need that answer. and the qualities that you talk about in an essay kind of answers that question for you. So I think this is one where it could lean in that direction of, clearly this person is dedicated. They've done their research at a very young age, done their research, have committed so much to this profession that they've gone for. Now, so that's kind of where I'm like,
in
okay,
terms of like topic. Yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, I would say that in terms of topic and content, I think that it does well in terms of like selecting something that maybe only this person could talk about. Like, I'm not seeing generic statements or saying like, this is what everybody goes through. So I do like that they're bringing it out from their own perspective, and like they're just like bringing out their own account. Now, that being said, I think that the personal accounts in this is just way too narrowed in. Number one, in a childhood timeline. This is just, I don't know how old this person is, but like talking about the summer before 5th grade, unless this person is applying for law school in 6th or 7th grade, like that's a really weak statement to bring out in terms of like an example of showcasing themselves. So I understand, like I see this a lot actually in applications where somebody's trying to build a childhood timeline in order to prove a lifetime issue or like a lifetime journey, or like saying, or like even trying to prove like tenacity or some sort of change of perspective. Like they are trying to use time as a weight, like a weight that proves that they really are meaning what they say. And I think that what you and I always find, Ayaka, is that who you are presently, you are the person that is asking to go to law school. You are the person right here, right now. And so the closer you can get into, we just talked about this, taking ownership over who you are right now and taking ownership and processing that, you're going to be a little bit better off for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, a lot of times, even I have that origin moment of like, I did mock trial in high school, and, that's kind of the spark and interest. I write nothing about that, right? And it's just, and it's a result of the high school self is not applying to law school, right? The person who has lived a lifetime after that moment is applying to law school. So that's kind of why I get really iffy on childhood memory and being that's the reason why you're going to law school. Not that this person has done that, but it's very tailored.
I actually like that point that you make, because again, Ayaka and I are not saying that you can't talk about childhood. You absolutely can. I think that making it for a purpose and not making it like the center of the story. Like what I have in terms of the problem I have with this particular essay is that it is very like child centric in terms of their timeline, in terms of their origin story. And I'm just going to talk about content again. The third paragraph, it absolutely just goes into resume mode. It's almost as though this person like mentally crashes and like doesn't know like what else to talk about, and so kind of just starts to like recount maybe like something that they did get or like something that they went through, where it absolutely, like I feel like this essay is missing a lot, and like it does go on just a little bit, but this I'm actually not surprised that this person crashes, because they spent so much time in a childhood timeline. To me, it probably looks like they don't even know where to go from here.
For sure. And I think, the listing of stuff, that all adds to it. What I do like to commend is, kind of the ownership of this person took with saying, I am an exceptional performer. And, I've said it quite a few months ago, but it's like, this is the point where you can flex who you are. Right? There's no one out there on admission saying this person is not a great performer because this person did do X, Y, and Z. Like there's no one out there doing that. And for you to be able to say, I am an exceptional performer, I think that shows ownership in this person and saying and awareness. The one piece that I do have with this, and this is in terms of content, and I understand this is the first draft, so it's not the biggest issue at this point, but there's this slight shadow of abuse in the background. In that mentioned once in the first paragraph, it's taken out, and then it's mentioned again in the third. Now, this is not something that I'm going to say like you can't talk about. You can talk about it. but I can't see commitment to that subject in this essay. If this
Mm.
wanted to talk about it, they need to commit to it. If not, take it out because it's distracting from the story.
I think that that's really interesting point that you make, and I'm going to kind of back it up for a second in terms of this first sentence. It says, I'm an exceptional performer. You know what I find really funny, and that Ayaka, you and I have talked about, is that people trying to build hooks and then accidentally building a hook that they never follow through with. And what I'm seeing the follow through in terms of mostly it's just the second paragraph, because the first and third paragraph actually say like a whole bunch of nothing in terms of like what this person's actually doing. So I'm just going to stick with the second paragraph here. The second paragraph actually never once mentions the act of performance. The second paragraph, it's like they start out saying I'm an exceptional performer, and then they sort of like mentally do this like backtracking and backpedaling of just like classes, and obviously spends way too much time talking about like how much like time that they spent, like the 2 to 5, the 5 to 7. That is absolutely not trackable in terms of like keeping up and pacing. But what I'm trying to point out is like this hook works, but then it shows up nowhere else in the essay. Like they never actually talk about the act of performance. And I see that happening a lot in just different patterns. Somebody will say, I, am a leader, and then they really talk a lot about like a lot of hardships, but it actually ends up overshadowing. And that's what brings me to the next point of this like plumb line of like something is going on at home. And it's interesting that they bring it up like at the end, but I'm not seeing like how this person is an exceptional performer. I'm seeing that like they have trouble at home, but that's not really working for me.
I agree. And I think okay, so one thing is I do know that this is a first draft, so I don't really mind the kind of ongoing explanation of the effort that goes behind the great performer. However, I do agree there is no follow-up to what does it mean to be a great performer. And I think the effort of that comes out in the whole the awards that this person has gotten, right? Like the outstanding dancer, recovery from injury, choreographer, performance, like all of that, like that tells me, okay, this person is an award-winning performer.
I mean, at the same time, though, to bring those things up, I'm being really picky, and this person is totally fine with that. But bringing those things up, and if I remember correctly, the rest of this essay doesn't really talk about those awards. Right. So then it just becomes like a mouth jar, like garble of really long things. And I want to take this out like of this essay for anybody listening to this. And I just want to like plug this idea in that if you are spending like 2 lines saying the name of an award or saying the name of an organization, really think long and hard about that. Like I've seen a lot of essays where maybe somebody spends like 2 to 3 lines, like saying something that's like the formal name of an organization that they worked for or a club that they belong to. And I just have to wonder like if that's the most effective use of space. And I've never seen it done entirely well. Like, and so if you're using these really big things, like just take up a lot of words, I would advise against that.
I agree. Because sometimes saying a nonprofit is easier than saying a whole name. And it's more expressive. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've talked about like content here and topic, and I'm not going to go through the whole 5-wave system here, but what about maybe like in our second wave where we start to talk about structure, the way that this person has chosen to set up the story?
Well, I think, sorry, not to rewind, but before we get to structure, I think where this essay is headed is, I think, of like a personality strong essay, right? Like this person is saying, I am a strong person. I can get through all this stuff that this person has gone through. And so that quality reflecting into how this person's going to be in law school, be as a lawyer. And when I think about that direction, does this setup help this person? And going into that structured conversation, I don't know. And I'm saying I don't know because there's just so much stuff that can get condensed into one paragraph. To be honest, paragraph 1, 2, 3 that we have here can get condensed into one paragraph of like what this person wants to say. And if that's the case, that's the first paragraph in an essay. And so, like, in terms of structure, doesn't make sense. Well, you've got the makings of a first paragraph and you're setting it up to say you are a committed person, you're going the full 10 miles to get anything done, and that as an opening, not bad. I think that's great. Need to see more of the content to make a judgment call.
Oh, I see what you say about that. And also, I'm just gonna say, like, I'm ready to go into this next draft, but just looking at this first paragraph, I call this a processing paragraph. When somebody is like stating their own thoughts and their own quotations and questions and asking ourselves questions. I see this a lot in first drafts, which is great. Ayaka, you've pointed out, like, please just stream of conscious, just go for it. Just say what's really on your mind, but posing questions to the reader, it really stops momentum. And I don't think it's really doing the person what they want it to do. And so I call this a processing paragraph, where somebody's asking themselves a question and they're trying to solve it. And I see this so much. And for example, I've seen essays where somebody will say something like, but what do I want to do with my life now? Or like, but does that seem like good enough? And that's just a processing thought. That's not a complete package thought that you want to present to somebody else. You want to actually present, especially in your law school application, you want to present something that has already been processed. You don't want to present that like lingering thoughts and questions that you have. It doesn't work for a 2-page essay.
Absolutely. And last thing about this is, I think you can tell this person had thought about how to open this essay, because you can see a little bit of a writing style shift from the first paragraph to the second paragraph, because
yeah, you can. Yes.
They've thought about this first paragraph and how they're going to open the essay. And then the second, third paragraph, it's a little bit more of, in the moment writing. So
right, like this recounting what happened and just kind of listing out. We actually just saw an essay like this. It's just really interesting. And I'm sure we're going to come up with a term for this, but if anybody's listening to this right now, go and look at your draft right now and read that first paragraph and then read the rest of your paragraphs. And
does it sound the same?
Yeah, do they sound the same? Is it, because what happens is that first paragraph, a lot of people are writing and it's like this kind of like flowery or like ethereal, or like they're posing questions, and that's all processing, and just figure out like, how can you match it? And if that's how you really are and that's how you think, then write a whole essay like that. I wouldn't advise it. I wouldn't actually suggest that, but we just saw essays like this right now in that last hour that we just spent together. So I think that must be something that happens pretty commonly.
And how many times have we said, get rid of that first paragraph? You don't need it. Like, it's not, you don't need it.
Yeah, I don't want to try to like put my ideas on anybody else's brain, but I think that what happens is like people are like trying to ease into a water, like, swimming forward. Like they're like, here's kind of what I'm going to talk about. And like, they're trying to write in terms of like this vague way and get the reader ready. And it's just a 2-page essay. So we're right there with you. We're already right there with you. It's not.
And really I've said it before in a class, but like, we spend so much time in our head thinking about the hook and how to make it interesting in that story, that the second follow-up to that is, does that match the story you want to tell in your essay? A lot of times it doesn't. Sometimes it does, but it's not the same tone. It's not the right language. Like, there's so many things going on that first paragraph, I don't want to guarantee this, but it's almost a throwaway. So
Yeah, you can like ditch it. Yeah, I mean, it's just like I'm gonna throw in an LSAT tip here. Sometimes people ask us, "How do I get faster at something?" And they're doing time sections, and I always ask them, "Well, are you doing a warm up?" And if you're not doing a warm up, you're probably not going to be that fast. So the first paragraph is kind of like your warm up. Just throw it out.
yeah, pro tip: 30-minute rope warm up.
People are asking.
This is admissions. LSAT practice, do a warm up.
This is LSAT Unplugged admissions. Do a warm up when you're doing time sections. Okay, let's go ahead and go. The people ask for Ayaka. The people are asking, and
I know.
so there you go. All right, so this is the 10th draft of this person's essay, and Ayaka is going to read it out loud, and so I'll do my best to just scroll for you.
And as you can see, it's a little bit longer than that first draft. We saw great things that have happened. But here we go. So, and I talk fast. So, okay. A little over 2 decades ago, I became obsessed with professionalism. My experiences at home were broadcast among my peers as strict, a euphemism for domestic violence. My response to the problem was straightforward: become a professional dancer. It was a youth favoring career requiring grit, commitment, and teamwork. I thrived in the harsh environment and loved the communal effort of competition. My nickname, Focus, was earned quickly. I memorized every routine I was and was not in. I volunteered for every class and asked to watch every alternative practice I was not enrolled in, using the long hours to learn more. When I thoroughly found out I was flat-footed and not flexible enough to qualify for extensions during a performance, I spent daily allocated time in my Texas bedroom performing sit-ups and leg splits. Shortly thereafter, I began to accept scholarships to train in both New York and Los Angeles. I became reliable. During my time in undergraduate school, choreographers requested me so often that the faculty held an emergency meeting, anticipating any injuries worsening if I was requested at the same pace as the year before. They asked me to take the fall semester off. In that time, I brought a notebook with me everywhere, detailing how the body swings with gravity, somatically approaching choreography. Upon my return, people mistook my charisma on stage for a spur of the moment inspiration. It was from hours of organization and studying the work down to when to take a breath. One of my most rewarding performances happened when the choreographer asked me to walk around a stage imagining love for 6 minutes. The other dancers performed outrageous stunts, flipping one another, legs reaching the sky while twirling and jumping and reaching dramatically all around me. The piece ended with me finally overcome with the love I was seeking. I expanded my legs and arms, allowing my head to reach back while my leg reached forward, stretching, finally freed, all in slow motion. I was described as magnetic and nuanced in the textures of complex performance. Some audience members shared that they were in tears by the end of that piece. I felt moved. And yet, after 2 decades of certainty towards a goal, I was caught by surprise. I was walking down the street of the Mission neighborhood in San Francisco and proudly saw myself on posters outside the Mexican Sweetbread Cafe. A local reporter was interviewing me. He asked me how it felt to work in a job where I got to be me. My mind startled. I left that night wondering what it meant to finally be myself, as the reporter had suggested. I thought of the unpleasant ways I had come to build my skill set of mental resilience, the strength that contributed to my artistic distinction. In the middle of nights filled with assault, I had concentrated on freedom. When my parents performed acts meant to terrorize, I used my imagination. I stayed focused. I knew what attracted me to dancing in the first place. It was the connection I felt while working within a team I was not experiencing in the demands of living in a physically abusive home. I had reached for the first obvious profession available to me at the time and succeeded in understanding how long-term commitment works. I know my years of proven dedication, severe discipline, and imagination can be repurposed. I am competitive, but the years of working with people from all over the country and traveling internationally has made me intensely empathetic and globally minded. My dancing has nourished in me a compassion for humanity and a psychological endurance that I believe to be of value for furthering my education. The art of performance is fluid and permanent, open to interpretation by the audience and to the dancer at the time of showing. I find it interesting to produce something meaningful from endless amounts of detail. When done right, the large amounts of research a dancer synthesizes can leave an audience member changed. I'm finished.
Okay. This almost doesn't even seem like the same person.
No.
And I would say in a good way.
Wow. Wow, strong statement. I think more fully formed thoughts and ideas.
I would say it seems as though this person has attempted to shift away from like, this is what happened when I was little, into like, this is the foundation of like how I'm walking the earth as an adult. I think like this person is trying to convey more of that like pushed out, like zoomed out view of what makes them. And that, and it seems like this person is trying harder to make that right turn into why legal career. I think it's not fully there. And something that I really struggle with in terms of the content of this essay is that this person has given us, yes, that deep dive into like sort of that lifelong commitment, but they've also like almost exhausted the reader. Like it's just a little bit too much. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say right now, like I can sort of tell when I'm reading something that someone's written and they're trying to catch every fish in the sea with like one net. And it's really hard to convey what this person is trying to convey in a 2-page essay.
I agree. And I think for me, this essay, I gotta like back this up, but this essay peaks at the wrong time. If
I agree.
and
It's like kind of like, it feels like it's like dragging, like just, I feel like this, you know, when you put too much stuff in the trunk of your car,
yeah.
you
Well,
can
okay,
pull
so
it out here.
tell me if you feel differently. But for me, I feel like this essay peaks at the whole description of the most rewarding performance. For me, that's like a moment of like, this is real. This person takes us on that journey of being on stage and takes us on the dream of dancing, and it's so beautiful. And I'm like, that being smack dab in the middle of the essay, it almost, whatever you follow up with, it's going to feel weak.
Wait, did you say whatever you follow up with, or what, all the stuff before that? Because I'm like, the stuff before it feels so like,
it peaks at this moment, and then it's almost like you're released from that beautiful moment, and it's like, well, crap. So that's kind of, and you know, I can kind of tell where this person is going in terms of that switch to law school. Understand, like, it makes sense to me, but because this moment is so beautiful and so rich, I'm like, there needs to be a little bit more space between this moment and that law school piece.
You know what I just got like interested about when you were talking is that when you were talking about the peak and like that, like, it's funny because when you were reading it out loud and you're like, agree with me, you know, or not, when you were reading out loud, you almost like roller coastered up when you said one of my most rewarding. And that's actually something that I find that you and I are actually kind of continuously asking applicants to do more of. Like, what part of that experience was the most exciting to you? Or like, what part of that mattered to you? Because when they do get stuck, like this person did in that first, like, if we look back at the first draft, like they're telling us about all these awards, but they don't actually tell us, like, did those matter to you? Like, or like, was that hard to get? Like, they're just recounting. And so I think what we're both feeling from this fourth paragraph is like, this is why I was doing that. And I just kind of like randomly in my mind played around with like, what if, I don't know, Ayaka, what do you think about this? What do you think of like that was the hook paragraph? Like, it starts out. You're saying you're going to say the same thing.
Same person. I'm like, you should open with this because number one, it's not pretentious. and it's telling us who you are as a dancer.
Like
And
takes us right there.
right. And you're still saying you're different from other dancers, right? And so it's kind of it's differentiating you in that way, on top of you're a dancer trying to go to law school, right? So this switch happening, I think that would be a great way to open this essay for this person.
It's so crazy that like you said that, because we've both like looked at this essay before. I have been trying to figure out like, how does this person it feels like they're like driving this like little like car, and like they're trying so hard to make that turn into like why law school, and it's like, why is that not quite working? And I think you're right about that. They're trying to kind of bring up these really important parts in their life, but it's like being backed up next to each other structurally in the essay. Whereas like those first 3 paragraphs definitely paint this person's mindset, which I think is really important. I think that like what they bring up in the end, when they're talking about like this person, they have a psychological endurance. That to me makes a lot of sense of like why this person would make that statement. They do, it seems like. And you know, anytime somebody's like creating a life of sport or athleticism, like we know that. But I think it would be interesting, like play around, like making that 4th paragraph actually the top, and maybe seeing where those other paragraphs like fit in to maybe tell their story. But I would start there.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to kind of cut that essay at that 4th paragraph, bring it to the forefront, and then give a little space between, because it's such a lovely moment that's happening. And you know, we just talked about momentum a little bit, but this one, that has so much momentum to it that if you kind of slowed it down, it would be like a screeching stop. So I think you need to ease that, you know, don't lose the momentum, but move that conversation in a way towards that law school dream that is happening.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? I think that this essay is teetering. I have seen essays before where maybe somebody, excuse me, I have the hiccups. I've seen somebody maybe like experience something either very intense or serious, or maybe like something that took over a long period of their time. Like, for example, something that's very respectable is maybe like becoming a caretaker for a family member over the course of a few years, or maybe experiencing something traumatic, or anything that takes a lot of time. And something that I see happen with applicants is that they accidentally or maybe purposely stylistically try to place that burden on the reader by like trying to drive home like it wasn't just this one day, it was like day after day after day. And I think that this essay doesn't fall into the category of trying to burden the reader, but I think it's like dangerously teetering on like trying to drive home like how it was day after day. So I don't think it's doing that yet, but I would tell this applicant like just be careful. Like I would, oh, this sounds like kind of silly, I don't know, Ayaka, if you agree with me, but I would be like, don't put any more hardships in there. Like whoa, like kind of like be really careful. Like you're starting to almost like try to burden the reader, and like just try to figure out how to pace this where you can say like, yes, this really was an intense like span, but also like try to just bring us here, like why law school.
Yeah, and you know, I know earlier in that first draft I was like, you know, the heavy subject of abuse, it's in there, and I kind of like the way that it's presented in this draft here, in that it's not it's not like the hidden dragon, right? Like it's just it's a fact of this person's life, and they're, you know, it's just there. And the essay comes back to that idea of like, this was sort of not an escapism, but kind of this ability to connect in a way that you couldn't connect in the family. So that's kind of, I understand that distinction that this writer made. Here, I think where I get a little tired reading is the second and third paragraph of like, okay, flat-footed, not flexible enough, so you're working on it, and then you have I don't know if it's injury, okay, so any injuries worsening, so not, it's almost like, okay, yeah, we get it. I understand they're two separate things, but in the realm of working on something that, you know, is potentially a career ender, like, you know, that I get. So, and you know,
You know what?
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, I agree. I also get tired in the second and third paragraph. And you know what I think it is? I think that the writer is trying to showcase like barriers, but they did it like kind of, they could do it better. Like, I feel like it's like done a little bit poorly. Like, they're kind of like trying to be like, well, there are these barriers, and like, this is how I kind of like overcame those. And you and I have spent some time talking about this idea of like, it is really hard to figure out what details to bring forward and what to leave out. And so if I were giving advice to this applicant, I would say like, just spend like a little bit more time. Like, can you give one better barrier instead of like two little ones?
And I don't know how comfortable this person's going to be talking about this, but I think there is something to be said about this performance, about imagining love and that harsh home environment, and like what, you know, what does this person interpret it as love, and how that comes out in performance. You know, that might be a little bit too out there for people to kind of say like, that's going to be my personal statement to talk about this performance and how, you know, like the home life and blah blah, like, you know, that might be a little bit too out there. But I think that's an interesting point to be made about, you're talking about this amazing performance that, you know, you take us on, and it's much more like the reality in the home life is so much more heavy, and that contrast, and I feel like this writer was trying to do that, right, to say like, these are all the things that went into this performance that is beautiful on the outside but took so much to get there. And
Oh, I see what you're saying. And like, I can see that in the paragraph right after, which won't be right after, but they're talking about like, the reason I'm able to do that is because of like this. Like, they're saying like, this is what was allowing me to do that. And actually, like, that's really, maybe that's interesting. Maybe it's not like that they're using these other lessons, like they're using this channeling, and then they're putting it into something productive, I think.
yeah, because I think what this person is saying in that last two paragraphs is like, this dedication to dance wasn't it, like, yes, it's a love of dance, but also there's this sort of moment in that home life that isn't great, and so there's this community out there that they can lean on and be part of and be connected, and that tells me that there's a lot more going on that kind of culminates to this performance, right? So I think that how to present that is probably a like puzzle that we still need to figure out, of like, okay, let's cut the strips of paragraphs out and rearrange it and see how it fits.
Definitely. And I think the last thing I'd say about this is, it seems like this person really loves dance.
Oh yeah.
It seems like this person really could talk about it for a really long time, which I think is definitely interesting. From a really harsh critical eye, though, I don't know the answer to this, but I would say to them, like, I get it. You love it so much. You have to like figure out how to convey that and also not make us tired. Like, it's almost like that person at the party that's like still talking about something that we're like so interesting. Like, it's really, I think it's a fine line though, because sometimes you and I, Ayaka, we're trying to get people to talk more about what they've done. And I think that this person has achieved that. And now it's kind of time to like figure out in a way, this person is in a really tough spot, I think, because this is like where, if this was a sculpture, you're like trying to just chisel like tiny things away to kind of formulate it. We have a comment in the chat from Suchita here that says, there's so much here about their dancing career. And as Ayaka was reading it, I kept expecting to find a turn towards why law school or switch in career, but I don't see that. I understand that it's unfinished. I would even suggest to start with why they want to go to law school and then explain their switch in career from dancing to law. That's really, I love that idea. And maybe even if that's not, that could be the final essay. And even if it's not the final essay, I think that that's like the perfect exercise for this person. It feels like I can definitely see like this person could be a good candidate for law school. Like it seems like they're able to push themselves past discomfort and also like figure out how to stick with something.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's still quite a bit of work to be done. And it's to me, it's insane how this went to this. I don't know how long this person spent on it, but they still have some more work to do.
Yeah. And I think you're right, Suchita, in that like that turn to law school, that's going to really, I think with this specific draft, that would really make or break this. Yeah. In mind here.
Make or break it. Yeah, I think so too. I think this person has some like choices to make and some things to do.
I mean, granted, it's a little long, so it does need to go a little short. So, you got to cut a little bit, but I think this person's doing a great job taking that original idea to this form. What needs to be added is really, well, that's the thing. It's like, is it absolutely necessary to add a law school piece to it? I think it depends on how this person wants to end the essay.
I agree. I think that from reading like the first draft to the 10th draft, this person has showed a lot, right? And even like, from the first draft, it's like I guess when this person mentioning like domestic violence, I can even see reading this, like they can skim it to 1 or 2 sentences. And it's like, it blew my mind. It's amazing to me, and I think, I guess for me is like, as Ayaka was reading it, I expect to find that turn. But and like you guys, you both were mentioning it, like it's nice, I guess, to know, flat-foot, you're this person have been through a lot and obviously have put a lot of work, but like I'm expecting that turn and it didn't show up, like, and yeah, like kind of expecting that, because like for me, I guess is like, if you're it's more so much about the dancing career, but I didn't see that turn. And I guess, I don't know, another way, and then like you said it, suggested this person that they could play around and see kind of like, why law school, and then to kind of explain, oh, this is what I did a lot, as for my dancing career, but now and this is why I switched it, right? And then kind of wrap it up with that like reasoning of, you did all of this, you're a professional dancer, and then now why this person decided to go to law school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is I know we're over time. Super like creative decision that I'm just like throwing out there for this person. I love this like moment of figuring out when to take a breath, right? And that I totally understand, because like when a lot of times when you're talking in front of people, I have the little commas of like where I can take a pause and breathe and all that, right?
Singers have to do that, right?
Yeah. And I think if this essay started with that moment of one of my most rewarding performances, that's like the inhale in the essay. Mm-hmm. And then, but I don't want the essay to end in an exhale, because that feels a little weak. So there needs to be a moment of another moment in this essay, and that's what I'm looking for. And I think that's the challenge with this essay, and it would be wonderful. I don't know if it can be creatively done. I know I'm asking for a lot, but if we can do some sort of, not a metaphor, but this kind of like echoing of breath in the essay, it would be a beautiful essay in that way. But that's just a creative moment that's like beyond content and beyond anything. Like, that's not gonna make it, it would sound better, it would feel better, it would roll off better. It's just not, in terms of content, not necessary.
Ayaka, you're such a beautiful commentator.
I'm like, I want it to be so much.
We can do it. We can do it. Yeah, I think what's really interesting is that this applicant has clearly, like, I don't know what they this where they want to take it, but it seems like this is actually where it gets harder. And I think that draft is where Ayaka and I want to see everyone at some point or another, is figuring out how to create that breadth in the essay. And that's why we want to talk to everyone. That's why we want to work with you all so much. And that's why we want to look at your essays, because this person, I have to be completely honest, if I had seen their first draft, I don't think I would have expected them to be able to write a draft that looks like the 10th draft. And that was done strictly by just us, Ayaka and I, talking and figuring out how to get this essay to a better place. And as well as with Sochita. Sochita's been in the room also with this applicant. And that's what consultants do. That's what we do. And so we want to do that. Email us at admissions@lsatunplugged.com. If you're in the course, send us your drafts and we'll spend an entire hour working with you, just like we just did with that applicant.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.